What defines gender for me is what brings me euphoria. Like, being referred to as he and being called a boy is what brings me joy. So that's how I define it. I don't define my gender as I hate my tits. Hi, my name is Cameron, and today I'm going to talk about how I figured out my gender. First things first, I want to say I've been trying to film this video for about 5 goddamn hours, but there's this store that's right outside my apartment that plays this fucking Christmas music literally all fucking day. I'm just gonna apologize in advance if you hear anything in the background. I wanted to make a video on how I figured out my gender to help other people who might be questioning their gender, like, figure out their gender too. I didn't want to make a whole PowerPoint presentation on you might be this gender if you feel this way, because that's not my style. I'm not going to give you a whole menu of genders to choose from and be like, and this one has this in it, and if you feel this way then you might be this one. So to start from the beginning, when I was about 4 years old and I started questioning the reality of literally everything, including God, I thought that I had a penis. And I don't think I knew what the word for penis was, but I thought that I was like secretly a boy, but nobody was telling me. And I thought maybe I had like boy private parts, but I was just like socially conditioned to be a girl. But it didn't really bother me to the point where I like wanted to do anything about it. I was kind of like, well, this is what I know, and like I just feel a little bit different from the girls that I know, but I also don't know how to be socialized as a boy. So I guess I'm just gonna stick with this. So for like 11 years I thought that I had a penis and nobody was telling me that. Then I think I was like about 9 or 10, and I was in the car with a family member and the radio was on, and the radio host was talking about a transgender man who had gotten pregnant. And I remember I asked this family member what that meant, what like transgender meant, and like how did this work, how could a man get pregnant? And all they said was, oh, that's what weird people do, referring to being transgender. That's something that weird people do. And I remember like not saying anything back, but I remember looking out the window and thinking like, that's probably something I'm gonna do. Like I literally remember thinking that's probably something that I will do like when I'm grown up. Didn't really give it much thought after that. I didn't really go home and like research it or anything. I do remember I looked up penis on Wikipedia and I saw the picture and it really scared me, and then I looked up vagina and that scared me even more, and I still didn't know what I had because I didn't want to look at my private parts, because I was not in an environment where I was encouraged to look at my genitalia. I went to a Catholic school. Anyways, I was like 11 and I started getting into like post-hardcore, like scene kid music, and I really wanted to look like the men that were in these bands. They weren't like very masculine. They had like long hair and like tattoos, and you know the fucking type. But I really wanted to look like them, and I didn't really think about it too much. I was just like, oh my god, I want to look like him. The first man that I remember specifically wanting to look like really badly was David Schmidt of Breathe Carolina. That was my first favorite band that I discovered on my own. Great scene kid music if you want to get into that. Anyways, if you like 100 Gex, you'll like Breathe Carolina probably. Then I think I was 14. I was entering high school, and I had been on Tumblr for a few years, and I had come across, I don't know where or when exactly, but I had come across like a community of people who were talking about non-binary genders, and I was like, holy shit, this is a thing. Like, I have more than 2 choices in life. And I started reading all about that, and I actually started to understand what the word transgender meant. Like, I feel like I kind of knew what it was before, but I didn't really give it much thought. And then I realized, oh, this like makes sense, like this is me. It just immediately clicked for me, and I think that's something a lot of children, or at least young teenagers, are experiencing nowadays, is they learn about gender through the internet and it just clicks with them. Some people think like, oh, there's all these new goddamn genders on the internet, these kids are getting brainwashed and thinking that they need to be trans. That's not a thing. It's called experimenting with your gender, which I did a lot of. I think I identified as like agender for a while, but I used she and they pronouns because I was like under the assumption nobody's gonna ever respect my they them pronouns for me, so I might as well just get used to being called she, which is stupid. But I was also in a suburban town in Connecticut, and it's not like anybody referred to me anyways. I had 2 friends. It's not like anybody else gave a shit. I was a freshman in high school. Who the fuck is gonna care? And it was like 2013. Pronouns weren't even being talked about back then. Back in my day, pronouns weren't a topic of conversation. I identified like that for a hot minute, but I like didn't tell anybody, I think, except maybe like 2 people. And then like also online, because it's easier to come out and be referred to with the correct pronouns, because it's not like these people are seeing you face to face and like making assumptions about you in person. It's like, this is my online identity and this is how I want you to refer to me, and then usually everybody just goes along with it. I remember I was just kind of floating around with a bunch of different non-binary identities, like different labels, for like a long time. It was just last year, like 2019, that I actually came to terms with the idea of being a non-binary boy, because I had never seen anybody identify that way. And then I actually like saw somebody on Twitter who that was how they identified, and I was like, this makes sense, because I started to feel like non-binary wasn't enough to define me. I feel like there's like something a little bit more, but I just like don't know how to describe it. So it wasn't until like last year that I actually felt really confident in like how I identified, and it's just because I saw somebody else identifying in a certain way, and I was like, holy shit, like that actually makes sense. The way that I have figured out my gender is by like seeing other people identify in different ways and being like, oh, that clicks, oh, that doesn't click, oh, this clicks, that doesn't click, but this does. So I wanted to give a few little tips and tricks about how to figure out your gender. Look to people online. I mean, if you're here, then you're already looking at people online, but look to people online and how they identify, and like maybe you could find somebody who identifies in a certain way that kind of like resonates with you, and you could be like, oh, like I feel like that, because that's how I figured it out. Another way is to play around with pronouns, like I mentioned before. Like, have people, if you don't have anybody in real life who will respect your pronouns, then at least you can try online, like having people refer to you with specific pronouns that you ask to be referred to by. And everybody's pretty respectful here if you're in the right spaces. And no, pronouns don't equal gender. It helps in figuring out your gender in the long run. For me, at least, it did. Like being referred to as he felt better than being referred to as they all the time. I don't mind being called they, but I still, I guess, would prefer to be called he, but they is fine too. So that's why I use the pronouns he and they, just as long as you don't call me she. And that being said, like playing around with pronouns could also apply to like just playing around with different labels and playing around with gender expression too. You don't have to settle on one gender and like that's the only fucking chance you get. Like you can't change it from there. It's a journey. Like people change their minds. I said this before, but I want to reinforce that because I feel like there's a lot of shit on the internet where it's like, if you change your mind about your gender, then fuck you. Or like if you say that you're trans but then you decide, no, actually I'm cis, then like that just proves that being trans is a trend. It's so fucking stupid. Don't believe it's nothing. It's nothing. It's literally just your personal journey trying to figure out who you are. Like, don't buy into this shit about people trying to tell you, oh, you're a fucking trender, oh, you're not valid, blah 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 blah, all this shit people say. It's stupid. Okay, if you're questioning your gender identity, then play around with it. And if you end up finding out, oh, actually, you know what, I think I'm just cis, then fine, that's fine. And if you find out that you're trans, then that's great. Welcome to the Down with Cis bus. Also, I want to say, you don't need to be able to trace being trans back to your childhood. A lot of people can, but it's not necessary. Also, you don't need to base your gender identity off of how much you hate yourself. I don't think you need dysphoria to be trans. I think what defines gender for me is what brings me euphoria. Like being referred to as he and being called a boy is what brings me joy. So that's how I define it. I don't define my gender as I hate my tits or I hate being called a girl. Like, yes, I do hate being called a girl, but I don't think that's the basis of my gender. Why not let people define their gender through what makes them happy? What makes them feel good? That's just my opinion though. In the end, all I have to say is do what makes you feel happy, experiment, have a fucking ball, because we only get a short amount of time on this fucking planet, so you might as well find yourself on this fucking rock floating through space and feel good about yourself while you're here. Follow me on Instagram, my @ is Boy Cameron. Follow me on TikTok, my @ is Boy Cameron. Follow me on Twitter, my @ is PissGoblin69, and no, I will not change it. I love you, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.